Today I came across a very interesting and valuable video by Professor Sam Vaknin. He talks about psychology and narcissistic abuse, and yeah, he's really great. I'm going to try and see if I can do some clips, side by side video presentation. But it's really helped me understand the religious trauma that I have experienced throughout the 50 years of my life. 50 years. I'm still blown away by that number. 50 years I was buried in religious trauma. And I'm still, it's 5 years that I have been working on my recovery. And I now understand with this breakdown what really happened. So everything that you are actually seeing on my YouTube channel is me trying to recover my core self that had been entirely lost through the Christian fundamentalism that I ended up in, and the biblical teachings that I was under, which have all the hallmarks of narcissistic abuse. Now, people are going to defend God, of course, against what I am saying, which is a form of gaslighting the victim, right? You taking the side of God and validating God and trying to protect God's reputation is actually adding more abuse on me, on the victim of narcissistic abuse. So we need to be careful with that, because in doing so, we're unconsciously trying to protect and preserve an unconscious fear in ourselves. So yeah, the last thing you want to do is shame and blame the victim of a narcissistic abuse trauma. So now that I understand this, my journey in reclaiming my own soul is starting to make a lot more sense. Now I understand what my YouTube videos were all about. Without knowing it directly, it was my subconscious soul guiding me on this reclamation path of finding my core soul and core self again. So as you listen to him explain the tactics of the narcissist and how it impacts the victim, when you overlay it with Christianity, with the whole preamble of the Old Testament, first the heaping of the guilt onto the sinner and the complete decimation of self-identity, and then bringing in the New Testament this need for a savior to rescue you, all of that feeds into the decimation of the core self and the self-estrangement and self-abandonment. And so I'm not here to defend or validate any religion or belief or ism. This is actually all about reclaiming my core self. And I'm here to support and encourage you in reclaiming your core self. I'm here to validate you, not your religion, not your faith, not what you believe. Those things are irrelevant, really irrelevant. If we want to get to the core, we have to reclaim our sovereign self, our core self, before it was destroyed by narcissistic, what's he calling it? Entrainment. So have a listen to his definitions and descriptions of the narcissistic abuse.
But what happens in the wake of narcissistic abuse is a hollowing out of the victim. It's as if the narcissist excavates the victim, mines the victim's emotions and cognitions and affirmations, and then leaves behind a devastated landscape, a wasteland. He replaces you with himself. And I can prove it to you. If you're feeling that you're not yourself, then who are you? Who is doing this feeling? Who is this entity that feels that you are not you? Which entity, which element, which core in you, which identity does the self-estrangement, the self-alienation? What in you, what element, what figment, what ingredient, what component in you now tells you, informs you, in unequivocal terms, that you have changed to the point that you're no longer you? Whose voice is it? Yes, it's the narcissist's voice. It's the narcissist's introject. It is the narcissist who drives you away from your own self, your own identity. What happens during your relationship with the narcissist in what is known as a shared fantasy is that the narcissist entrains you. Entraining is a nice fancy word for brainwashing, synchronizing literally, physiologically, your brainwaves with the brainwaves of the narcissist. And using this conveyance belt, using this transmission mechanism, the narcissist injects you, implants in your mind his voice, his introject, a representation of himself within your head, in your skull, there to do his bidding. He uses it to control you, to manipulate you. The narcissist introject, the narcissist voice in your mind, collaborates with other introjects, other voices in your mind, maybe your mother's, maybe your father's, maybe influential peers, teachers, role models. He collaborates with them. The voice of the narcissist forms coalitions, introjected coalitions, clusters or constellations of introjects. And what this coalition does, exactly like coalitions in war, they destroy you. The coalition destroys you from the inside. The narcissist is hell-bent on vacating you, negating you, eliminating you as an autonomous, independent, agentic person. The narcissist doesn't want you to be separate from him, external to him, incapable of action without his incitement, inducement, incentivizing, and blessing. The narcissist, in other words, generates in you what is known as a schizoid state, an empty core. What a coincidence! The narcissist consists of an empty core, and he induces in you an empty core. He wants you to resonate with him. He wants to merge his black hole with your newly formed black hole, so that together you can become an extended void within which the narcissist can thrive by guaranteeing your eternal presence and your subservience and submission and obeisance and obedience. So the narcissist entrains you, he injects into your mind, he implants in your mind his voice, and then he uses his voice together with some other voices, he uses them to create in you, to generate in you a reflection of his own internal state, of his own state of mind, which is a state of mind or an internal state of emptiness, the schizoid core.